let's move along here. I want to go to my buddy here, who we actually had him on the show several months ago. Jay used to deal at Encore Boston Harbor, and now he plays 1-3 and sometimes 2-5 pretty much full time. And he's got a question about variance. How's it going, Jay?
Pretty good, Bart.
Jay, I think I don't know when the last time you called. Maybe it was 4 or 5 months ago, or is it even longer?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
So I know that you've been sort of playing full time, mostly 1-3. I see you. I'll probably see you tomorrow because that's when I'm going in. But I know that, you're putting in a fair amount of, how many hours have you been putting in a month?
I'm averaging about the 25 to 30 per week. So
per week, okay.
Looking at about
100 to 120. 100 to 120. So, and then you hit a little bit of a bad streak, but you've been very unlucky, right?
Yes, it's thank God I have the personality that I do. It's I mean, obviously, we all make mistakes, and it's not the first time, not the last time. It's just, when you're going in as a big favorite and you're losing, it's I mean, you can laugh it off as much as you want and say, it's variance, blah, blah, blah. But at one point, you're like, it makes you talk to yourself. I mean, guaranteed everybody in the chat has gone through it. You have gone through it. And when I saw you last week, I said, there are things that I do that I try to do to fix it. Obviously, you can't fix it, but you try to lower it down as much as possible. And I said, you know what, but that's when I saw you. I said, what do you do when you start to go through this variant, especially when you were playing all the time, years ago?
Well, so one of the things that I did back when, and knock on wood, when I was playing when I was playing full time at 510, and I'll acknowledge that I was probably running on the lucky side of things. I never really had huge downswings, in the sense that, and this is why I always said that I didn't really play 1020 all that much. Like 510 was a 1500 cap, probably like my biggest downswing at 510 at Commerce. 1500 was probably like 20 grand. So that's not that much in the scheme of things. I mean, you're talking about like not even like 15 buy-ins. But then when I would go up to 1020 and buy in for, say, like 3,000 to 4,000, like I was going through $30,000 to $50,000 downswings, and I wasn't even making that much more per hour, maybe 20 to 25% more per hour. So it wasn't worth it for me to move up, really, in the sense of a lifestyle with the stress. But the other thing, you call it a leak, is that when I went through those more frequent downswings, I didn't get the volume in. So I wasn't going in as much because I didn't want to play. So when I looked at my results, I actually made more, even though I was making more per hour at 1020. I was making more money at 510 because I would get the volume in. I would never go through the swings anyways. And even if I did, it was such peanuts as comparison. I was just able to get more volume in. But there were times when you'd go through these spots, and what I would do, and I'll say to you, and I think you actually did this because I saw it in your email, is that a lot of times, especially in Hold'em, you can't really do this for PLO because the equities run so close, but if you're playing like at least 100 hours a month, I would start keeping track of some of the largest pots that you play. Maybe try to pull out 10 of the largest pots, or a few of the largest pots that you play every week that get all in. And take a look at your actual EV matchups. It's not perfect because you talk about there's Galfon, it's like using some old terms, right? There's Galfon bucks and there's Skalansky bucks. This is like going from 15 to 20 years ago. Skalansky bucks are defined as just basically your EV. So if you got it in 500 with aces, and the other guy got it in 500 with kings for pot's $1,000, your Skalansky bucks are $820 in that pot. You're 82.18. Galfon bucks are like, what is your equity in pot share against somebody's perceived range? Meaning that, like, if you make a call where the guy has a draw, but like 90% of the time you're drawing dead, and you happen to hit like 1 out of the 10 times that he has a draw, your perceived range, your equity against his perceived range is actually very bad, but you might actually win the pot just because you got lucky that he had a draw like that 10% of the time. It's hard to calculate in real life Galfon bucks, but it's easy to calculate Skalansky bucks. So if you pull out the biggest pots that you play that are all in, and then you just look at it, like how far behind here, like how far behind an actual EV am I running? Like I remember you gave me an example in the email about how you flopped, what was it, forceful on like ace 4 or something like that.
Yeah, it was ace 3. I had pocket threes
Okay.
and yeah, there was like three of them in like a half hour that, I was, and thank God I was so fortunate that the people that I was in those three hands within a half hour, I think I was 75, 88, and 91% going into the river. Thank God they had small stacks that I wasn't running into somebody with, eight, $9,000 stacks at that time. Thank God. Because I lost
Yeah.
all three.
Well, I mean, again, this technique is not 100% foolproof, but what I would like I was saying was that if you pull out the largest all-in pots that you're in, if you can pull out 10 of them like in a given month or a few a week, and then just take a look at how far below actual expectation you are running, it can be a good way to prove that you're just sort of running, at the bottom end of expectation over a very short period of time. Again, it's not perfect because sometimes bad variance, quote unquote, will affect the way that we play. And you might look at it like, oh, I got it in with like pocket tens versus ace king in a $2,000 pot, and I lost it again, right? Like I'm supposed to have like 55% pot share in a $2,000 pot, and I lost it again. But the actual call off with 10-10 might have been really, really bad. Like maybe the guy shows up with only like 4 combos, the ace king suited, and he's got aces, kings, and queens every other time. So it's not foolproof. But if you do it though, it gives you some data. And I know that you've done that a little bit.
Correct. That I have. And then even as far as I've been fortunate enough the last couple of months where each month I've had a really big week that's kind of offset the losses. And it seems like the last couple of weeks, I'm going to use the term, everything's right in the world. Everything's been coming back to normal. And what I try to do sometimes is, I'll change the time of day that I play if I'm, hitting a rough spot, or I'll tighten up even more, or, I'll change venues sometimes, if you're running bad someplace.
Well, actually, I want to read something from Nate here, one of our content creators. And I think he makes a good point here, though, too, because you just brought up that I'll play tighter. Here's the thing, though, about that. That actually might be counterproductive because Nate says increase your short-term variance to reduce your long-term variance. Most people try to reduce their short-term variance, and it makes their downswings longer, and your long-term variance skyrockets. So let me try to put that into easier English, because a lot of times people use the term variance. We kind of use in the poker community variance as a word for like how big your swings are, when in fact, mathematically, and I don't want to complicate things too much, it's not exactly that. So if you have a larger win rate, say I was winning like at 510, like, $100 or $110 per hour, my overall, I guess you could say, variance would be a lot lower than somebody who was a break-even player or somebody that was a very small winner. So if you are doing things that you are trying to control the short term, you're trying to like decrease the short-term swings, but what you are doing is decreasing your hourly because you're changing your style to being, say, overly tight, that will increase your variance because your hourly is going down.
Yeah, you're right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
It does. It makes sense because normally I'm only at like probably about a 10 or 15% VPIP to start off with. So now if you even tighten that up even more,
10 to 15, are you sure? 10 to 15. That's really tight.
No, and that's the way it's been the last couple of months. It's just been so tight. It's almost to the point of, not that you even, obviously, everybody wants to get hit with the deck. You can't. Sometimes you have to make your own luck and everything else. Been playing poker long enough to know that, you can't sit there and wait on aces, kings, queens, and ace king. You can't do it because you're going to end up being a losing player.
No, of course not. Of course not. But I think it's just times when you can take it too far. Like I got into a situation on my primary podcast that I talked about where I had a very, very cuspy situation that ended up costing me money last week because I was distracted. So I should have just folded because my head wasn't in the hand. I was actually distracted about something else. if you play that out where you're taking cuspy situations that are, you know what the most positive play is, but now you're taking them out because you don't want to play a big pot when you know it's correct to say like 3-bet Jack 10 suited against a button open, like in the small blind, but instead you just fold it. You can see that doing that, and I'm just playing an example, right? I mean, that's just an off the cuff example. You can see that doing that actually decreases your overall hourly. And again, it's going to actually be harder to get out of that downswing. So I think what I would say here, you might be, I mean, changing the time up if you want to do that. I don't really believe, and I don't know, it's not 100% superstitious. Changing the time up makes sense if you think it's more profitable at a different time. Changing the time up if it's the same profitability or less is a mistake, just like playing less hands is a mistake because it's going to decrease your overall hourly. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's kind of a trap that people get into. They're like, oh, I want to play a certain hand with less short-term variance, which will then decrease your overall hourly over the long term and actually increase your variance over the long term. And all of a sudden, like your downswing is more prolonged than it should be.
Right. And obviously, you don't want to change your play. I mean, I'm just not the type of player to say, well, you know what? This isn't working. I'm gonna start limping aces, kings. I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
just, whatever happens, happens. And especially bet sizing. I'm not gonna change my bet size, and it's gonna be, we've all been through it. It's gonna work its way out. And like I said, thank God the last 3 weeks have been very good. So I'm happy with that.
Right. And again, just for Bob Burgers in the live chat who says that variance is being misused a lot. There's no such thing as short-term variance versus long-term variance. Right. I acknowledge that. Variance has become a synonym in the poker sphere of swings. And I know that it doesn't really mean that mathematically, but it's sort of how we use the term. Mathematically, I know it kind of means something else. But that's what people talk about when they talk about variance. Well, Jay, thanks for the call.